Hello. Thanks so much for being here for Indivisible's primary candidate meet and greet. We are here with a candidate for Nicollet County Sheriff, Marc Chadderdon. Marc, thanks so much for being here today. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And after that introduction, then we'll go through a few prepared questions and then with some possible follow-up ones, and then we'll throw the room open for questions from attendees. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right.
I'm Marc Chadderdon. Candidate for Nicollet County Sheriff. I have lived in Nicollet since 1995. I have 4 children, all of which are grown and out of the house. I've been at the Sheriff's Department and served as a dispatcher, jailer, deputy sheriff for 12 years, and been a criminal investigator for the last 15.
Great, thank you. So one of the questions we asked was about adopting a policy for officers to issue civil citations or notices to appear in lieu of arrest in all eligible cases. Could you tell folks who haven't seen those written responses how you responded and elaborate a little bit more on that question?
Civil citations are something that some states have chosen to adopt rather than running people through the court system. They've been effective in some states. That's something I wouldn't be afraid of looking at for minor offenses. However, we have we have something kind of in place now where even if citations are issued, a lot of those individuals, depending on their circumstances, are sent through a diversion program. I believe in collaboration. And one of the things with the civil citation, if you're asking a lot of this frontline officer to make a lot of determinations on individuals' economic background, set of circumstances in a very short traffic stop. The advantage of doing it through a diversion program is you have the county attorney's office involved, sometimes probation, and there's more time to see what individuals' needs are, maybe help with getting a driver's license back in place. Why don't they have a license? So some of the things we're doing now are actually quite effective as well. I know they're giving a lot of opportunities for individuals that maybe are issued a citation for no driver's license, that if they get their license back because they haven't done a requirement, that if they do it in a certain time frame, they throw that ticket out. And so the collaboration is good. A lot of these responsibilities that are thrown on frontline officers, they just don't have enough information to make the decision for some of these offenses.
Great, thank you. So another question we asked was about the problem of race or racial bias, or racism and racial bias. Do you think that's a problem in Nicollet County? Do you think it's a problem in the department? How would you address these issues?
I wouldn't say it's a problem in the county. One thing I did before running for office, I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted to call and check. There are several different ways individuals can file a complaint against law enforcement for racial complaint. Through each department, they can contact and do a written complaint if they think that they've been stopped for or treated unfairly due to race. They can contact the county attorney's office. They can contact the post board. There's several ways in which a complaint can be filed against an officer. I contacted each department, Mankato, our office, the county attorney's office, and they hadn't received any in the last 12 months. I know we're a very small department. I know the officers in our department very well. And I believe if any of our officers were acting in such a way and other officers monitored that, that would be documented and they would be reported. I can't say personally that I believe we have a large problem. Not to say that the perception of someone of color that may be here from the cities and have had bad interactions with police may still feel that way. I personally have stopped people, and where an individual stopped me because I'm Black. Well, at night or at 70 miles an hour, I can't tell the race of an individual when making a traffic stop, but their perception still may be that's there, but people have not, I guess, felt offended enough to file an official complaint in the county. So I think that's a good thing that we don't have that problem. But then again, with our demographics, we're 92% white in Nicollet County. And so, our county has changed and evolved, and we have a large Somali and Hispanic population, but still we're overwhelmingly mostly a white community.
Thank you. What kinds of measures or efforts would you engage in to try and address either the perception of racial bias or the experience of it on the part of a person of color who is involved with, an interaction with an officer? So either the perception or the experience, and also in terms of maybe making it possible for people to file complaints in ways, or for those complaints to come to light in ways that might have fewer barriers in terms of knowing where to complain, knowing how to file a complaint and where to go, and making it a big enough issue, because sometimes there are issues, but just because they don't make it up that chain doesn't mean that they're not there. So that's a two-parted question.
Well, I think it starts at the top, and it starts with the sheriff, and it starts with leadership. We have many communities within our county, communities that we have no interaction with. And I think that starts at the top. I think that people need to feel comfortable that they can file complaints. And in campaigning and working in the county for 27 years, there's a lot of people who don't even know who the sheriff is. There's only one in the whole county, and people don't even know or haven't heard from him on any topic. I think it's up to the sheriff to participate in events such like this here today. I think our communities within our county, our Somali community, until we were doing this or still started campaigning, I didn't know that they have a blog or a newsletter of someone that would be a great resource that we could be connecting with and saying if there's any questions that they could be referred to us. And I found this out through Chief Matt Groko in St. Peter, who they do reach out to those communities and do that. But I think that starts at the top. That's not for a deputy or an investigator. That needs to be coming from the sheriff. And right now, we have not done that, not only with our communities, our Somali or Hispanic, we haven't done it with our higher education communities, with Gustavus or South Central College, and which, everybody is having a difficulty in filling positions in jail and dispatch. And what a great resource if we had a connection with our universities, which do have a large population of individuals of color, to start that bridge in communication. And that is something I think would be an important and a good way to start. And participating in events that take place, which we do. We just had Fish with a Cop, and we had a large Somali population that came out, and we were baiting hooks and fishing and stuff with kids. And that was a great event put on by Nicollet County and the St. Peter Police Department, and sponsored by a group that I started.
Great, thank you. The next question is about immigration that we had asked, and we wanted to follow up on that and ask about the fact that during the previous administration, there were conversations about county sheriff's departments cooperating actively with ICE to deal with undocumented people. And what are your thoughts on this possibility?
Well, it's never been an issue since I've worked here. We have pretty limited involvement. If there was somebody they were trying to apprehend, we do have a large immigrant population that works. We have dairies. We have other large facilities. If there was someone who was wanted for a serious crime, and we had intelligence as to where they may be, but as far as going out and doing immigration, we've never been asked to, as far as when I've worked here, to participate in roundups or anything such as that. And I don't think that's the job of the local sheriff to enforce immigration law. And say it hasn't been an issue as far as I know while I've been here. And as far as I'm aware, we haven't been asked to do that.
If you were asked to do it, what would your response be?
That's not our position. One, we're a very small agency. we have enough personnel to cover road shifts and respond to emergency calls. And we have very limited resources. So it ain't like we can spare a half a dozen people to go off and do special operations. And so, yeah, if asked to do that, I don't think that would be our job. But I would say if they were attempting to apprehend a criminal for a crime of violence or whatnot, absolutely, we would assist in locating them. We would want them in our county.
Thank you. So I want to throw the questions open for anyone else who's attending to be able to ask their own questions, either based on what you've heard that you want some more elaboration on, or new questions that haven't come up yet. And if folks are shy about it, then I have some other questions that I could ask. Okay, any questions from our attendees? All right. So I have a question, and this kind of builds on some of the stuff you've already talked about, but as a candidate, how would you try to bridge the current polarized climate and work toward a more equitable, just, and inclusive community?
I think, yeah, I just touched on some of that and doing the outreach within our county. Again, that starts at the top, and training is a huge thing. I'm very critical of spending tax dollars on things that are not needed, but I'm not critical in spending it on training or equipment that keeps officers or custody officers safe. But it starts at the top and participating with what's going on in Nicollet County. And keeping up with what's taking place with technology. We don't have our own Facebook page that we monitor, send things out on. Surrounding areas use Facebook, and Facebook's not everything, but almost elderly people have it to watch their grandkids playing sports. They have it. It's a way for us to connect. It's a way for people to send in questions. It's free. It's maintained by another company. And I think that we do not utilize enough. We do have newsletters that go out, but it isn't very often. But I think we don't do enough press releases. I don't think we do any type of community forums or go out and make ourselves available to have questions. Like I say, I think St. Peter is hosting 20 events throughout the summer just for different people to come out, and it doesn't have to be for hours, but to come out and do a meet and greet, whether they've had watermelon feeds and ice cream cones, whatever it may be, for a brief event. And sometimes you get a lot of people and sometimes you don't. But I think that effort needs to be made, and right now it's not happening.
You're on mute, Yuri.
Sorry. So we have a question in the chat. What efforts has the department made to develop an understanding of the diverse residents of the county? Has there been any diversity training? Are there any people of color in the department? So building off of that last question and giving a chance to elaborate some more.
I didn't catch the beginning part of it, but we do diversity training. We have a lot of training that's mandated by the post board. The de-escalation training. We've had diversity training, a lot of which is there's a set of trainings which are mandated, and an officer certainly can request to go to training that if they're in patrol or investigations that more fit what their role is in their department. We do not have anyone of color in our department. I don't even know if we've had anybody that I can recall that applied, a person of color. We do have 2 females. We never had a female in our department up until a few years back. And we hadn't had a lot of applicants either. It's wonderful to see the amount of females that are now getting involved in law enforcement, because dealing with different victims of crime, sexual assault, it's awesome to have a female's perspective and have somebody who's went through a traumatic event to be able to talk to another female versus the male officer. But I think that's one role as well. But we're lucky to get anybody to apply right now. I mean, I know agencies that have had 0 applications after posting a job, or 3 or 4. And maybe that will change down the road. But I think that's absolutely would be a great thing to have diversity within our department.
Great, thank you. There's another question in the chat. What is your most important objective that you want to accomplish for the sheriff's office at the end of your first term if elected? And there's another question as well. How would you differentiate yourself? But I'll ask that question again afterwards.
Yes. Well, one, you'd know who the sheriff is. There's only one in the whole county, and people don't know who they are. And I think that's because of a lack of being available, being out in the public. I would also want to be, instead of being reactive to calls, I want to be proactive, and they would see a difference in how we're doing things now. We have done like prostitution stings or sex trafficking investigations, which is proactive, but mainly we're reactive. A call comes in and we send officers to respond to that. I think that we have to, I want to work on, like say, our reaching out with Gustavus, with our Somali and Hispanic communities. I want to put people in positions where they will thrive. Our morale is at an all-time low. Our turnover at our office is, and not all of that is administrations, but some of the employees that have left, it is because of our current atmosphere at the sheriff's department. Attendance is also important. In 2021, the sheriff's entitled to many, he's entitled to his vacations, but he was gone a lot. We lack a structure in place, a command structure that in his absence or in the chief deputy's absence, who's in charge? We can't have somebody sending out and saying I'm available by phone or email when you're 3 hours away up north. We are a small department, but when there's emergencies or things that take place, a command structure should be set up and maintained. And that's part of the reason that I've had an overwhelming support from our office staff and walking in parades with me and sticking their neck out, supporting me for change, because we need change at the sheriff's department.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat. How would you differentiate yourself from the other candidates?
Well, I don't know Chad very well. He's a very nice person. I've talked with him at the parades, and I don't have it. There's only 2 requirements to be sheriff: to be a police officer and to live within the county. He's eligible to run, as the rest of us are. Chad hasn't been in law enforcement very long, but I don't know him well enough to know what the rest of his qualifications are. I have worked in every aspect of the sheriff's department, from jail and dispatch, patrol deputy, and investigations for a very, very long time. I know that if your house gets broken into or you're the victim of crime, if you can simply Google my name and see the amount of calls and serious cases that I've handled, I know what needs to be done and how to get the job done to work on your behalf as the victim of crime. I've done a lot of trainings, whether it's sex trafficking, prostitution, cyberbullying. I've done the outreach out into the community, where I've probably done 75 of them: Rotary, Lions, Legion, hospitals, schools, and churches. I've done that, and that gives people opportunities to bring concerns about the sheriff's department to me directly. I think the sheriff should be doing that. I think the sheriff should be out and be available. And as sheriff, I will be out and be available and still be doing those public education talks. I think we should be identifying that, what our drug problem that we have, what his plan is to fix it, and letting people know, hey, yes, we have a drug problem. This is what I'm going to do to try to curb it. And to be truly transparent is saying when you have failures. We don't have transparency right now. Another huge one was the Texas school shooting in a town of 14 or 15,000, similar size of town we have in St. Peter and North Mankato. I can tell you right now that we have not done the training necessary if we had an event like that we are fully prepared. Our tactical team has, but they're not. By the time they get there, the event would be over. That takes a long time for them to get in place. But our frontline officers, we should be training So I know if this happens in St. Peter, what is the responsibility of the sheriff's department? Where are we going? Who has access to the buildings? We should be doing that training with EMS, with fire, and we should know what our response will be in the city of Nicollet or Lafayette, as well as in the city of North Mankato. And right now that hasn't taken place. There hasn't been the best working relationship between the St. Peter Police Department and the sheriff's office, and we're a block and a half apart. The officers get along. They have to because they respond to calls together, but administration has not. The prior administration at St. Peter, as well as the current administration, has been tension and the lack of training together. That will be corrected.
Great, thank you. And we've got a few more minutes. Any other questions that I'm missing from the chat? There's one question that kind of relates to what you've been talking about. So that last question was about kind of, you in conjunction with the other candidates. What would opponents say about you and how would you respond?
What would the other candidates say about me?
Or their supporters. So broadly speaking, opponents.
Well, I'm well known by almost all cops in southern Minnesota. I have started a nonprofit that we have one of the largest 100 cops come to Mankato. And I started that in 2009, I believe. We have one of the largest conferences in the state of Minnesota right here in Mankato. We save taxpayer money by having that local training here, a 2-day training. So you don't have to go to northern Minnesota and pay for hotels and whatnot. And we're large enough that we can have anybody, any large keynote speaker that we want. So I'm well known because I put that training on and get to meet a lot of officers through that event. I would think most of them would say honest. I think most law enforcement respect me in the area. I think I've earned the respect by example and lead by example. And one of the things in directives, we received a directive that we could not use any county resources during campaigning. And I agreed with that. At the last 3 parades, I see the sheriff wearing his uniform, which is a county resource, wearing the uniform out campaigning. All of the deputies that walked with me today could have wore their uniforms, I guess, if that's allowed, if that's the perception, but I don't think that's right. And instead of leading by example, it's saying, do what I say, but not as I do. So I have my own cell phone. I pay monthly cell phone bill that I'm using for campaigning, but he's using his county issued cell phone and it's on his literature. The 7010 phone number that's on his literature for signs and on his website is a county issued phone. And if I did that, I'd probably be ridiculed for that because it's against the direct directive that we were given as candidates that are running. And for that reason and others, that's why I believe I have the support, because I would lead by example. And I would never ask a deputy to do anything that I would not do myself.
Great. Thanks very much. Any final questions from folks? Anything that you would like to kind of bring up, final words that haven't come up, or issues that haven't come up in the questions thus far?
Sure. I've been contacted through the process of this campaign by a lot of people concerned about their individual rights. I know and did a little research because I wasn't very familiar with everything with Indivisible, and so I did some research on that. I've also been contacted by individuals concerned about losing gun rights, about what took place during the pandemic. Another one where I think our public should have been informed by the sheriff on what's going on when we're told to call in on our neighbors and whatnot. And what the basis for my for this is, I think it's important that our sheriff is neutral, but is protective of everyone's rights. Your right to protest someone else's private property rights. The sheriff needs to be often called to settle disputes and whatnot, and needs to keep the bias out of it. The sheriff needs to keep peace in our community, but protect individuals' rights that are granted, not by the sheriff, but by our laws. And I plan on doing that. I think also that spending is a huge issue. Our budget now is over $5 million at the sheriff's department. $2 million when Dave took office, or 2.5. and it's doubled. Yet our county's population has only grown by approximately 4,000 people. So when I started, we had 5 deputies. Now we have 12, 13. Our office staff has exploded, but our jail's the exact same size as when it was built in 1984. So why are things so much more money? And finally, I said I have no problem with spending money if it's something that makes us safer or for training. But when people are in office too long, when they're in elected office, they think they're sometimes untouchable, that they're more important than they are. I can say that. I would not drive a 3/4 ton pickup like he drives. He doesn't haul anything. He doesn't pull anything. He's driving a vehicle that gets 10 to 12 miles the gallon. And it's all for status. And I think that's wrong. I think a standard vehicle with standard license plates, not vanity plates, is quite sufficient for a public servant to drive. But that's each their own. It's not illegal, but I don't think it's proper that that's done. I would do things differently, and it wouldn't take 4 years for you to see a change. You would see change immediately.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your taking the time out of your day to be here and to share this information with us. And if anyone has any extra questions for you, could you drop your email in the chat so folks can reach out?
Absolutely. Thank you, and thank you for hosting.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.